Hi, and welcome to How to Joy, a podcast about the big, small, quiet, and loud ways that joy shows up in our lives. This podcast is an exploration. It's not a manual or a to-do list. It's a question, a practice, a space to notice joy when it bubbles up, to remember it when it feels far away, and to hear how other people cultivate it in their own lives and to be inspired by that. My hope is that this becomes a place to be reminded that joy is still here, still possible, and still ours to claim, even in the midst of the hard things. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin. Hi, everyone, and welcome to How to Joy. Thank you for tuning in, whether this is your first episode or you have been following me along this journey the entire time. It means so much to me. I am here solo, doing one of my solo episodes because I am finally ready to talk about the joy of my solo adventure to Peru. I've shared before that travel is one of the most profound experiences in my life. It's truly one of my greatest passions and joys. Every time I travel, I learn something not only about the world and humanity, but most definitely also about myself. There's something about stepping outside of your normal rhythms that creates so much space to notice and to reflect and to shift. It's no secret that this past year has been a hard one for me. A lot has changed. A lot has moved. If you know me at all, which I think a lot of you do, and if you have been listening to this podcast, now you do know me in some sense, even if we don't physically hang out all that often or ever. But the biggest shift I went through this past year is a very difficult and confusing breakup. And I will say that it has been a year that has asked a lot of me emotionally. And one of the great things that has helped me through this year is this podcast. So again, I thank you so much for listening and for being part of this journey. It doesn't really work without listeners. So I very much appreciate you all being here still. So this solo trip to Peru felt really important and necessary to me. I think whenever there are difficulties in my life, travel is a great outlet for me to create perspective. I don't see it as running away at all. The way I've been thinking about this specific trip is kind of similar how I think about powerful and intentional experiences with psychedelics. Not in the sense of escape, but in the sense of being cracked the fuck open and of being shown something. Having your perspective shifted in a way that you can't quite access in your normal everyday life. And especially being solo, there's something about being alone in a new place, completely out of your routine, that is super powerful. And it is similar to the experience of being on psychedelics to me. It strips things away and it brings things to the surface. And it asks you to sit with yourself in a very different way. There's not a lot to distract you. And that's really what this trip became for me. I read recently that travel can actually change your brain in ways that are similar to therapy. And that completely makes sense to me. With my mindfulness training, I'm very much in tune with my senses, or at least I try to be, and especially in a new environment. Your brain is taking on all that unfamiliar stimuli, new sounds, languages, landscapes, social norms. In my teacher world, we talk about neuroplasticity. That is just your brain's ability to form new connections and patterns. So when you're traveling, your brain is kind of pulled out of autopilot. It interrupts that habitual thinking and way of being that we so often are in. And in doing that, it can really help you process things, reframe things and stories you've created. And for me, it creates healing that is so powerful that I do feel like it's just as powerful as months and months of therapy. It can quickly shift things in unexpected ways. And I completely felt that on this trip. I did this for my spring break, so just a week. But I like to take that word just out of there because a lot of people, when they hear, oh, you were just gone for a week, and they think that's not very long, and they think, oh, that must have been a whirlwind. Could you even settle in and really feel the experience? But I don't see that way at all. I think any moment of time we're given, especially time when we are fully present, especially in the world we're living in right now, is something to be treasured. And I really don't like to think of things in a half empty way. So that week was glorious and it was the perfect amount of time for me. Again, there's something about traveling solo where your senses feel so alive that time really does feel like it slows down and you're not distracted and you're not splitting your time and attention. You're fully in it. And because of that, to me, the experiences feel so much more vivid and honestly easier to remember. It's like my brain is saying, this matters. Hold on to this. Hold on to this feeling. Hold on to this thought. And I'm not one to say, hold on to thoughts. But when you have those profound little nuggets of a thought that you know is important and you don't want to forget it, that's what I'm talking about when I say hold on to a thought. And a caveat here is if you are on your phone the entire time of a solo adventure like this, the magic is not going to happen. Just want to make sure I said that. For me, I do not need my phone when I'm traveling, besides if I'm lost, and also all the photos, because you know how I am with photos, y'all. And it's so freeing when I'm not with someone and I can take all the photos and not have to worry about what they're thinking about that. It's the bee's knees. Anywho, even the travel itself, which I know a lot of people aren't super down with, and I get it, traveling can be stressful, but I think of it as like a video game. I'm talking about the flying and the connections and the Ubers and things like that. I like to think of it as a video game. Each little step is like a different level. Each little challenge is like getting to the next warp zone or whatever, you know? And yes, there 100% are going to be frustrating moments, especially on travel days, but even those feel like part of the experience. For me, the flight was 8 hours. So, first from Denver to LA, and then LA to Lima, and that was a 8+ hour flight, I do believe. I did get a exit row, which was delightful and unexpected. Bonus points. See, that's like a one-up star when things like that happen. The analogy of a video game world when you're traveling really does help me. You might want to try it. But I wouldn't take away those frustrations necessarily. Maybe if there's a big old delay in the flight, but you got to make the best of it. You got to see it as the glass half full. And knowing that so many people don't get to have these travel experiences that I have had, I always have to bring in gratitude in those moments, and that helps as well. For me, nothing feels wasted, and every part belongs. It all matters. All right, so I'm going to try to just give you a little capsule of this beautiful moment in my life that was so very important to me and that brought so much joy to me in a time that was really important. So finally, from LAX, I get to Lima and it's very late at night. So that entire first day is a travel day, which again, a lot of people would find a bummer. But, you know, I watched a whole season of this cool show called Pluribus that Casey told me to watch, and I really enjoyed it. So that was fun. It was late in Lima, and my flight to Cusco was the next morning. So I rented this little hostel that was maybe 10 minutes away from the airport. A driver from the hostel came and got me and took me there. I stayed in this cute little room for the night. It was very quaint. I just wanted to have a bed to sleep in for 3 or 4 hours, honestly, is all I got, and a place to shower. And then a way to get back to the airport in the morning because I think my flight was at 6 a.m. Got up at like 4. You will find that is a trend in this adventure. Lots and lots of early mornings for incredible adventures. I get to my flight, Lima to Cusco, and I finally get to my destination of Cusco. I immediately felt this sense of awe. There are places that I've been, and I bet if you are a traveler, you understand this, where you just step foot onto that piece of earth and there's just this sense of awe. The altitude there just felt incredible. I did not feel sick. They give you coca leaves and tea and candies and I think a way to just smell it. They spray it on you. They would put it in your hands and you just took a big sniff of it and it supposedly helped with the altitude sickness. I'm sure it does. I think because I grew up in a high altitude place and I live in a pretty high altitude place, I didn't feel it as much as a lot of people do when they go to Peru. But the light and the skies and the clouds and the way the city just holds both history and present life all at once. It was really incredible. I stayed at this cute boutique hotel that was called the Andean Palace. If you're ever there, I would highly recommend it. It sounds fancy with the word boutique, but it was actually quite quaint and cozy. You would walk in, and there was a big open courtyard, which the people who cleaned the rooms would wash the sheets and actually hang them on a line out in the courtyard, which I found very endearing and lovely. And my room was right next to where one of the people who worked there would cook. They would cook breakfast for you, which was lovely. And they would also give you tea and coffee whenever you wanted it. I would hear her cooking and cleaning sometimes when I was in the room, which again, some people might be annoyed by that. I loved it. It felt like I was part of a community in there, and I really enjoyed it. My room had everything I needed. Thank goodness it did have a little plug-in heater because it would get a little chilly in the night times. And I will say I didn't fully figure out how to get the shower to be heated until the last night when I was about to leave the next morning. The guy did tell me, you have to flip this switch and then only turn the knob a tiny bit. And I think I was turning the knob too much, even though it didn't seem like I was turning it very much. Also, knob, haha. The last night I somehow was like, maybe I should turn it even a little less. And there you go. It was lukewarm at the most. That was a generous description of even that last night. I was getting a little wake up call with some cold showers while I was there. And honestly, I think that is what was needed because, as I was saying, there were a lot of early mornings to go on the adventures that I wanted to go on. All of that really did add to the charm, and I'm glad it was the way that it was. So that first day, I explored the city and wandered to my heart's delight, and I knew that the next morning, my first trek was to hike to these rainbow mountains that, oh my goodness, are incredible. I will say the hike was no joke. It was strenuous, and you wouldn't think it was if you looked at what it was that we did. I do believe it was because of the altitude. I think we started at 15,000 feet and then we went up to 17,000 feet, or maybe we started even a little bit less. So that's higher than 14ers here in Colorado. So I did feel that. And you would be walking, and yes, it was a little uphill. You would be walking not very far at all and already be out of breath. So it definitely was a challenge and one that I was so glad that I took. You did have the option to get a horse if you wanted. I'm not sure how I feel about riding horses in general. I was thinking, hey, I'm fit. I don't need that. I'm gonna hike this bitch. I'm glad that I did. There were a few moments where I was like, maybe I should have gotten the horse. But no, it all worked out. They gave you a walking stick, which was helpful. It's nice to be able to lean on a walking stick for a little bit. But I loved that I needed to push myself. The pushing made the getting to the top so rewarding. It was so worth it. And the amount of pride I felt in myself when I got up there has really stayed with me. On that hike, I went through a group. Actually, I used TripAdvisor. I am totally down with TripAdvisor. I recommend it. I've never had a bad experience with a tour on TripAdvisor, and I've used it quite a lot. So I met people all around the world who were also on this tour. And the tour is really picking the people up in the morning from their hotels, driving us there because the Rainbow Mountains aren't right in Cusco. So that's where getting up early in the morning starts. That time you needed to meet your driver at 4 a.m. and they would drive us to this cute little place that we got to have breakfast at. They drove us a little bit further. And oh my goodness, the drive was so incredible. It felt like I was driving through the Lord of the Rings sets. It was incredible. Just the lush green, these ancient stone gardens that you'd see every so often. Alpacas and llamas, they're just chilling on the mountainside. But then after driving through all these gorgeous landscapes, we got to the trailhead and started the hike. Getting to chat with the people who were on the tour was also a highlight. There was a couple from Australia. There was a couple from Brazil, Colombia, I believe, the UK, Canada, and one other person from the US, and one person from Ecuador. And I love meeting people from other parts of the world. It creates this moment of connection that is very profound to me, and getting to hear a little bit about how they are feeling about the US, because I did want to know, was interesting. Felt important, and it felt nice to hear that they care about what is going on with this country and the people in it. All is not lost. I do believe that. And getting to be with people also reminded me that you really are never alone. Even if you're on a solo adventure, you really are never alone unless you choose to be. Standing on top of the Rainbow Mountains and just seeing the beauty. I had never seen mountains that had the look of what those mountains have. And I'm not even going to try to explain it. You should just Google a photo. Know that the photos don't do it justice. It was incredible, and I was so happy that I chose to do that tour. It was kind of a last minute add on. I tend to do that. I have a few things that I know I want to do, but then otherwise, I kind of wait until I'm almost about to go to wherever I'm going and then figure out what feels true to me in that moment. And it always works out. After the hike, we go through that beautiful drive again. We stop to have lunch. It was a beautiful first full day. Thank goodness I wasn't as sore as I thought I would be, because that very next day after the Rainbow Mountain hike, it was my Machu Picchu day. So again, a very early morning. I think I went to bed at 9 p.m. that night before, especially after the day-long adventure I had just had. And for this, again, I think I booked it through TripAdvisor. I had a driver who picked me up. I think it was around 3:30 a.m. He drove me an hour and 30 minutes, I want to say, to the train station that they have, which will take you to the town that is right next to Machu Picchu. I'm so glad I chose to do Machu Picchu in this way. There are hikes, of course, that you can do. You can do the Inca Trail, but I didn't have that amount of time to do that. So this way was a day-long adventure, and it was so very worth it. The train ride was absolutely stunning. You were winding through mountains and along this raging river and seeing just incredible fog and clouds, all the plants as a horticulture girly, just seeing the bromeliads up in the trees and orchids upon orchids and running water everywhere. Oh, incredible. Felt like you were in Middle Earth. And not to mention the giant mountains that are so regal and wise. They reminded me a bit like the Tetons, but different. It's hard to compare. I can only say that they made me speechless. Once I got off the train, I found my guide. He had my name on a sign. I love that. I feel like a VIP when that happens. I think that if there would have been more people who booked that tour, it would have not been a private guide, but it was just me and him, me and David. He walked me through the site. We first had a coffee, and I had a little veggie empanada that was delightful. And then we took a bus to Machu Picchu. Oh my, Machu Picchu really does live up to everything people say about it. I understand why it's one of the new wonders of the world. Tooting my horn a little bit here because I think it's pretty fucking cool. I have been to several of the wonders of the world. I've been to Machu Picchu now. I've been to the pyramids of Giza. I have been to Mount Fuji. Oh, Mount Fuji is not one of them. That's on another little list of mine, though. I've been to the Colosseum. I've been to the Taj Mahal. So I've been to quite a few. I think maybe a goal of mine is to try and see all of them. I have not been disappointed by any of them that I've gotten to see. In all of these places, there is a kind of energy that I feel that's really hard to fully explain. It feels very intentional. It feels very sacred. And I guess I will just leave it at that. I learned through David that the Incans believe in 3 realms, if you will, and they represent these realms through animal. One thing I will say about all of the places I've visited in South America is that they seem to have such more respect for the living world around them. And I'm generalizing here, but I just feel like it's more peaceful, which is not the narrative you get when you watch the news and you're hearing racist things about these places that I've always had positive experiences with. Anywho, the 3 realms. So the condor represents what they think of as the upper world, or the spiritual world, if you will. The puma, which represents the earthly world that we are present in right now. And the serpent, which represents the underworld. And when you're there, you can really almost feel that connection between the sky and the land and something deeper that is unseen. It feels very meaningful to me. Definitely visit Machu Picchu if you are in Peru. And I would recommend getting a guide because they know so much more than what you could ever read in a book, in my very humble opinion. So those were my 2 big excursions. I did get to go also on an open bus tour that was really unexpected. It took you all around the upper parts of Cusco, so you got to see the whole valley of just so many houses and people. And I love the feeling and the reminder of how small we are, and just knowing that there's such a gigantic world out there where people care and love and are trying their best. It really gives me a sense of calm that is important. Part of the bus tour, which I don't remember it being part of it, but hey, bonus points. We got to stop and feed some alpacas and some llamas, which was so cute. And then we also got to do an Incan ritual with an Incan, I believe they call them maestros. I think some of the other people on the tour were not into this part and weren't feeling it. I was the absolute opposite. It was a beautiful experience that felt meaningful to me. I don't want to go completely into it because it feels like a sacred experience that needs to be kept safe. He gave you the opportunity to manifest the things that you wanted to manifest and to also let go of the things that are no longer serving you. A lot of the ritual was about letting go. It felt very poignant to me, something that I will keep close for a long time. It was nice to get to drive around more of Cusco on that day and see just how marvelous it is and all the different parts of it. I mainly walked around Cusco the other days. Not even mainly, I did not take an Uber at all. So I walked and walked and walked, which I love doing. So it was nice to have that one day of going a little bit further. The cherry on top was that Incan ritual that was a surprise, a very pleasant surprise. And then just wandering around Cusco was the rest of my time, and I loved that so much. That's where my senses really kick in. The smells of the food, the sounds of music and people, the winding streets, all the markets. I could spend hours just walking and taking it all in. There's something so magical about having complete freedom to just be able to follow your curiosity, to linger where you want, to take 20 pictures of the same flower if you want, to change your plans at any moment. It just feels incredibly expansive. And I don't have to negotiate with anyone or worry that I'm taking too long or that they don't want to do this. I just have to listen to myself. It's the most free I ever feel. I guess here I will say that I know a lot of people will tell me I could never travel solo. And I just want to say that you absolutely can. And I highly recommend it. You learn so much about yourself. And it feels so incredibly empowering, especially if you are a woman. And I know that I have privilege saying this because not everyone whom I love have the freedom to travel like I do. So if you have that freedom, I think it's important to use it and also work towards a world where everyone is able to travel without fear. I know safety is something people worry about, but honestly, the only time I felt uncomfortable on this trip is when I ran into some fucking boomer bro American people. One of them wearing a Let's Go Brandon t-shirt. They were incredibly privileged and felt the need to talk to me and tell me to be careful, honey. It was such a stupid thing that they had no business even talking to me about. In that moment, I didn't say anything. I just ignored them, honestly pretended like I didn't speak English. Because you do have to have your senses and your wits about you when you travel alone or with others, but especially when you're alone. I really believe there's an intuition we all have, that kind of internal compass. And when you stay connected to it and when you're aware and not afraid, you can move through the world in a way that feels both open and grounded. And I'm not interested in living in fear. And I know that I have that women's intuition, that feminine intuition that will keep me safe. And when I'm in tune with it, I know that I will be okay. I'm not interested in living in fear. And I hope you don't feel like you have to either. Just a little side note, you can do it. I believe in you and I want you to do it. I want you to find this joy. I know not everyone loves to travel. I think you're crazy, but for those of you who have that travel bug, go on one solo adventure and let me know how it is. Another thing I want to say, when you have a day where you're just kind of wandering around and going where your heart tells you to go, which is the best part of traveling, I think. Do not like when everything is planned out and completely structured. It's in those days where you have choice and you can really listen to what your body needs. One thing that I knew my body needed was a massage. And I highly recommend getting massages in other countries. I have done it in several countries, and there's always something unique about them, a different technique, different energy, and it's such a gift to your body, especially after something like a very high altitude hike. So just going to throw that out there. Not to mention that they're typically so much more affordable. It's really lovely sharing energy and being touched by someone who is typically local from the place that you are exploring. One thing that really stood out to me too was the nighttime energy in Cusco. Not at all in a party way, but in a community way. Even on a random weekday night, the main plaza was full of life. All of the plazas were actually. There's so many plazas. I really feel like the USA misses the mark on public, free community spaces that are actually welcoming to people, where there are benches, where there's a beautiful fountain, where there's life. There were people dancing. There were families out walking, kids on scooters, couples on dates, vendors selling things, all the music. I just loved it. It felt like people in a community, and it doesn't often feel like that to me in the USA. unless there's some sort of event. But this was every night, late, 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. It just felt alive, made me realize how much I miss spaces like that. And I'm so glad I have a community where we can create that. The people I love value it like I do, to just simply gather and exist together. There's so much more I could say about Cusco and all that I did. I went to these beautiful gardens. I saw so much art. I really valued that they seemed to value showcasing Incan artists, and not just Incan artists of long ago, but people who are still living and doing modern things with their art. I had delicious meals. Their drink of choice, called a pisco sour, which I had several of those, one being a mango one that was so good. I could tell you so much more, but I think my words wouldn't do it justice. And so I think I will leave it there and just share about my last day, which was, you guessed it, early morning from Cusco to fly back to Lima. And then I had a 12-hour layover in Lima, which I purposefully did because I wanted to make the most of at least getting to explore another part of Peru for half of a day. And while I was up in the clouds in Cusco, Lima is sea level by the ocean. And after being so high up in the mountains, that felt really surreal. And y'all know how much I adore the ocean. And so a lot of that day, I walked along the coast. I saw a lot of street art, which was really impressive. And just again, wandering to my heart's delight, that feeling of freedom and of following whatever calls to you in the moment is something I don't want to forget, because you can create that in your everyday life. Yes, we do have responsibilities and things that we are dedicated to that are important. There is still space for wandering to your heart's delight. And finally, after a very long day in Lima, I took an Uber back to the airport, picked up my luggage that I had stored for the day there. You can do that, by the way, if you ever need to do such a thing for a very inexpensive price. The Ubers there also were very inexpensive. For a 15-minute ride, it might be $3. For my airport ride, which was an hour and a half, I did not plan that exactly correct, and it was a little stressful, boss level, getting back to the airport, I must say. But you live and you learn, and spoiler alert, I made it. But even that long Uber drive was $20, I want to say. I made it back. I went from Lima to LAX. I had a little home alone running through the airport to get my connection, which was LAX to Salt Lake City. Yeah, this was a long one. Then another running through the airport home alone moment from Salt Lake City to my flight to Denver. It was exactly the way it was supposed to be, I believe. And there is such a sense of accomplishment when you get through those hard things and you make it to your flight. It's so satisfying. I know I sound like a weirdo, but I am a weirdo, so you shouldn't be surprised. This whole trip reminded me of who I am. It reminded me of how capable I am, how fucking expansive I am, and also how small I am in the vastness of this world, and how beautiful that actually is. And I'm just so grateful that I get to share this and that I got to go in the first place. Shout out to my partner, Casey, who understands the importance of these adventures for me, because I also know a lot of people will say, oh, but if I'm going to go on a big trip like that, I want to go with my partner or a partner. And I'm just so glad that he understands. He also let me use his airline points to get there. I had let someone use my airline points the year before, and so it was just so generous of Casey to do that for me. And being able to share this on this platform is really precious to me. I used to journal my travels a lot more, and while I still take many, many photos, having it recorded, having it witnessed by you all feels special. Because otherwise, experiences like this really do start to feel almost like a dream, and I want to carry this feeling into my everyday life. And if there's even a small part of you that's curious about doing something like this, remember, you can. You really can. And I am always more than happy to talk with any of you, especially if you are a woman. I'm recording this on Easter Sunday. I can't go without saying that you cannot be a follower of Jesus and support what is happening in this country and do one small thing to make a difference this week. There are things you can do. I also wanted to say that because this is going to be my final episode for season 1 of How to Joy. I want to take the summer to still be recording and editing new episodes, new joyful conversations with new guests and old alike. And I promise I will be back. I cannot begin to explain how much it has mattered to me to have this podcast that I created during a time where I felt so very sad. It helped me in ways I couldn't imagine. One of the biggest joys has been creating more time to be with the people I love and care about so much and create joy with them. You hear it a little bit, but recording these episodes, there is so much laughter. I delete a lot of it, and I didn't realize when I was making this that would happen, that the joy is talked about on the episodes, but it's also created in real time. And another giant joy has been hearing from my guests that doing this was such an important thing for them, that they get feedback from their friends and family about what we talked about, how proud the people that they love and who love them are of them doing this. I did not think that would be part of this, and something I want to continue to create for people. Because when people feel that love and share it back with me, I feel it too. And that's really what this is all about. So thank you all so much. I hope that you have a wonderful, sunny, joyful, empowering, take no shits, give no fucks type of a summer. But give a fuck about this country and do what you can to help be part of the solution, not the problem. Perhaps I will pop on here and then and do maybe some mini mindful moments, some meditations on here during the summer. You all are so dear to me, whether we've met once, thousands of times, or never. I love you, and you are important. Until next time, go with joy. Thank you for listening, for feeling, for remembering joy with me. If something in today's episode stirred something in you, I really would love to hear about it. You can reach me at howtojoypodcast@gmail.com, or you can find more of my writing at sparklefabmags.wordpress.com. If you'd like to keep walking this path of joy with me, I hope you'll subscribe, share the podcast with someone you love, or leave a review. I've been told that those small actions really help more than you know. And finally, I'll leave you with this. Joy isn't always loud. It isn't always easy, but it is still possible, even now, even here. So I invite you all to take a deep breath, soften where you can, and let one small joy find you this week. I'll be back soon with more stories, more questions, and more reasons to remember joy. Until next time, have a sparkle fabulous day.